We're ready to start dreaming. Dreams are among the most enigmatic phenomena. I think to this day, psychologists and psychiatrists, I think, are not sure exactly. They have theories about dreams, but it's a strange phenomenon. And Judaism deals with dreams extensively. Number one, you have dreams throughout the Torah. Dreams are mentioned in context of Jacob. He has this dream, a ladder on the ground, reaching the heavens. Then, of course, Joseph has his dreams. They got him into a lot of trouble. Pharaoh has dreams. And many others throughout the Torah. You have people dreaming. And significance is attached to these dreams. They just tell the story of a man who had this dream in Europe that he had to become the rabbi of Krakow, a very large Jewish community. And he had the dream one night. The next night he had the same dream. And the third. So he goes to his master and he says to him, "Do I have to become rabbi of Krakow? I had this recurrent dream. It must mean something." And his Rebbe said to him, "Yes, when the people in Krakow have that dream, then you take it seriously. As long as you're the one who's dreaming about being the rabbi, I wouldn't take it so seriously." So this anecdote is a real reflection of what we know about dreams, that dreams are both nonsense and meaningful. Not at the same time, necessarily. But dreams could be absolutely meaningless. But even a meaningless dream has a purpose. But the dream, don't take it seriously. And at the same time, dreams could be prophetic. And they can have a tremendous amount of meaning. And you have everything in between as well. There's an expression in the Talmud, there's no dream without some straw in it. In other words, without some chaff and impurity in it. Not every dream has meaning. For example, when Joseph has that the sun and the moon and 11 stars are bowing down to him, what did he mean by that dream? That his father and his mother, sun is the father, the moon is the mother, and his 11 brothers will let to bow down to him. Jacob wanted to diffuse the conflict when he tells us to his brothers that I'm going to be the king and everyone's going to bow down to me. They were not so excited about that. So Jacob tried to diffuse it and say it's a nonsensical dream. He says, "Can I come with your mother to bow down to you?" Joseph's mother, Rachel, was dead. So Jacob was trying to say, the dream is meaningless, obviously because your mother can't bow down to you because she's no longer here. But the truth is that the dream was a true dream. But then every dream has some imperfection, has something in the dream that was not real. Someone once came, this is a true story, someone once came to the Rabbi and he said that he had a dream that the previous Rabbi came to him and told him to give a small amount of money to charity. Should he take that dream seriously? The Rebbe says every part of the dream should take seriously except for a small amount. That's the one part he doesn't have to take seriously. A dream is used in the book of Psalms. Many people recite this whenever they say the grace after meals as a preliminary psalm on a Shabbos or a holiday. When the Jews returned from Zion, Hayinu kecholmim, we have all been as dreamers. That means that they're describing their exile as a dream. One of the characteristics of a dream is that it can combine opposites. You could be in one place, you could be in Buffalo in the beginning of your dream. A half a minute later, you're in Israel, you're back in America, and you can be in different places, impossibly to be in those two places at once, obviously. But in a dream, even opposites could come together. That's a metaphor. That's a metaphor for exile. The exile is a state of being in which we could live opposite lives. You know, we like to call people who are inconsistent hypocrites, but that's not the right word for it. To be a hypocrite, you have to work very hard. Inconsistency is a human trait that we can talk about certain values one day, and the next day we violate them. That's not a hypocrite necessarily. A hypocrite is only someone who is devious about it and tries to give the impression that he or she is holy, and they don't believe in it at all. They're just trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes. Inconsistency means that our existence is a compromised existence. We could be in one place in the morning, we say our prayers, and we're imbued with God's presence, and then an hour later we can do something that is, in a way, ignores God's presence. That doesn't mean we're hypocrites. It means that we're in a state of exile. We're not where we ought to be. And sometimes we can be in one place, sometimes we can be in another place. So that's how exile is described as a dream. And the redemption, the coming of Mashiach, is referred to as waking up from a bad dream, from a nightmare. In a dream, almost anything can happen. The Talmud says there's one thing that you're not going to dream about. You're not going to dream about impossibilities. To be in Buffalo one second and to be in Israel the next second, that's not impossible. You just have to find a way of getting there quickly. But the idea of being transported from one place to another is not an impossibility. What is an impossibility, the Talmud says, is to dream of an elephant passing through the eye of a needle, without the elephant going on a crash diet, and without the needle's eye expanded. That you can't dream about because that's an impossibility. It doesn't just defy nature, it defies logic. It's an illogical statement that you're tall and short at the same time. Physically tall and physically short at the same time. That can't be. You could go on a diet and go from, well, no, you can't really go on a diet to get shorter, but you know what I mean. The Talmud says that if a person goes a full week without dreaming, nikra ra, that person is called evil. Very strange, enigmatic statement. If you don't dream for a week, you're evil. So I'm going to give you two different interpretations. One is that the word dream can have two connotations. It can mean literally when you're sleeping and you have these images and you're going through your consciousness. And a dream could also be an aspiration. And very often our dreams are our aspirations. That's why I think psychologists explain, why do people have dreams of flying? Why would that be a common theme in many people's dreams, of flying? Because that's the sign that you have aspirations. A person who no longer has aspirations, a whole week goes by and nothing occurs to you that I want to climb, I want to fly, I want to go above, I want to grow, then that's an invitation to negativity. The Hebrew, if I translated the words of the Talmud, the person is called evil, I can retranslate it as that person invites negativity. That when you have no ambition and no aspiration, then you're lacking a very important human trait, and that is an invitation to all sorts of negativity. There was a great rabbi in Poland, passed away right before the Holocaust, a young man. He was in his early 40s, I think, but he was one of the greatest rabbis in Poland, Rabbi Meir Shapiro. He was a member of the Polish parliament, interestingly. He and another great rabbi were members of the Polish parliament. They represented the Orthodox political party called Agudas Yisrael. So they had representation in the Polish parliament. As anti-Semitic as Poland was, they had rabbis in the parliament. And this Rabbi Meir Shapiro built a yeshiva in Lublin. It was one of its kind. It was a modern building for those days, and it had a fully equipped dining hall and dormitory. And to get in to that yeshiva, you had to know a few hundred pages of the Talmud by heart. That was an entrance requirement. And anyone who graduated from that place came out virtually knowing the whole Talmud by heart. So this Rabbi Meir Shapiro, when he started talking about his vision, people said to him, "Rabbi, you're dreaming. This is never going to happen." And he said, "I'm dreaming but not sleeping." So a dream is a sense of, I don't want to just stay in one place. I'm going to climb the mountain. I'm going to fly high with ambition. How would psychologists explain dreams? I think, well, I could be corrected here, but a lack of dreams they may look at as a suppressed energy, and without the outlet of the dream, it can cause problems to a person. Is there such a concept in psychology?
Not really.
No?
No, some people do. Some people
Okay.
do think
I read that somewhere.
That's not a general idea.
Okay, how do they describe dreams?
People may dream and forget about it.
Yeah, I'm not saying, people could dream and they forget their dreams. Or they forgot that they had a dream.
Right. It's usually something resulting from the residue of your day.
Okay, that's the Hasidic interpretation. Maybe psychology agrees.
It's basically the same thing.
Okay, the Hasidic interpretation of dreams is that during the day, we have all sorts of thoughts that go through our mind, all sorts of words come out of our mouth. And most of what most people say or think is vacuous, has no substance. It's clutter. And it all gathers, just like your soul doesn't leave you when you go to sleep. Your soul lives on, obviously. There's a little bit of a detachment, but your thoughts and your words are a problem. Because what happens with your soul when you go to sleep? What is supposed to happen? Your soul is supposed to, what?
Go up.
Go up. Where does it go? It goes into Gan Eden, the spiritual Garden of Eden, paradise, or some people would refer to as heaven, together with the souls of holy people, and you're exposed to the teachings of Torah. You get this incredible spiritual experience. But if your mind, if your soul is stained and soiled with all this garbage, all this clutter that we accumulate during the day, then the soul cannot enjoy. It's like there's a barrier between you and the other souls, and you can't, it's like you're in a classroom and you can't hear the teacher teach. There's a barrier, a sound barrier. Well, here, there's a barrier. And the only way you could get rid of the clutter is by dreaming. When you dream, what happens, all your thoughts, it's like a vacuum cleaner that you accumulated during the day, are all vacuumed out of your soul, and you're given the opportunity to have a cleansed soul that is able to enjoy the spiritual enjoyment of being in the Garden of Eden. And that's why in the morning, most people, when after a good night's sleep, you're refreshed. Why are you physically refreshed? Because your soul was rejuvenated. But in order to get rid of that garbage, you have to dream. And those are the dreams that you have in the beginning, mostly at the beginning of the night, soon after going to sleep. Because that's when you still have, you're overloaded with all this clutter and all this refuse that you have to get rid of. There was a Chassid, teacher of one of my teachers, who lived in Israel. He came originally from Russia. And in his old age, he would get up during the night to go to the bathroom. which is common for people who are after a certain age. And after he would go take care of his needs, he would wash his hands and sit down and learn for a half hour, learn some Torah. An hour or two later, he would get up again, take care of his needs, and then wash his hands, and then sit down and learn another half hour. And this happened several times during the night. So someone asked him, why do you learn Torah then? You should go back to sleep and get up a little earlier and learn Torah then. So why do you have to learn in the middle of the night after getting up? So he said he does it out of embarrassment. Embarrassment? He says, when my soul leaves this world, it joins the souls of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses, and all the great people, and we're all discussing spiritual matters, and all of a sudden I excuse myself, and I come back to this world, and I go to the bathroom. When I go back, they're going to ask me, where were you? I'm too embarrassed to tell them that I'm immortal, and sometimes mortals have to do things that souls in paradise don't have to do. So what I do is I learn some Torah for a few minutes, and when I come back, I tell them I was learning Torah, I was looking something up. So the basic level of dreams is where dreams have no real meaning. Don't take most of your dreams seriously, because it's just the vacuum cleaner vacuuming out all the garbage, and it's all clutter, and it's all mixed up together, and it's inconsistent. It's just a mess. Don't try to read anything into it. And that's a general rule, that if you think of something during the day, you're going to dream about it at night. There's a story in the Talmud over here. The Caesar, the Roman emperor, once said to Rabbi Yehoshua. Rabbi Yehoshua was one of the leading rabbis of his time who lived through the destruction of the Second Temple and beyond. And he was very known for his debates with philosophers, and he was even friendly with the emperor in Rome. So he was once questioned by the emperor, and he said to him, you say that you are exceedingly wise. You know, Jews are supposed to be very smart. Tell me, what will I see in my dream tonight? So he said, you're going to see that the Persians will press you into service of their king. And they will seize you and force you to pasture unclean animals, pigs with a staff of gold. Some ridiculous vision. So he thought about it all day. He was obsessed with this vision. And of course, he dreamt about it. Then there's a story with another rabbi, King Shapur. He was a Persian king later on, said to Shmuel, one of the leading rabbis of his time, the Jews say that you are wise. Tell me, what am I going to see in my dream? So he said, your dream, you're going to see the Romans coming and take you captive, and they'll force you to grind date pits with a golden mill. And he thought about it all day long, and he dreamt about it at night. So that's the first level of dreams, where you're just regurgitating what you thought of during the day. Sometimes you'll actually think about that thing that you thought about during the day, and sometimes it's just fragments of what you thought during the day coming together in one mixture, of one mishmash. That explains, going back to what I said before in the Talmud, that a person who doesn't dream for a full week invites negativity. What that means is that if you don't dream, then the vacuum cleaner isn't functioning. So all the clutter remains in your soul. And when your soul is so filled with extraneous material, it dims the light and the energy and the receptivity of your soul to things that are positive. So it's a sign that you need to be cleansed. There's a certain cleaning process that didn't occur. So even though the dreams have no meaning, they have purpose. Those dreams are meaningless. We shouldn't try to interpret them, but they definitely have purpose. The purpose is to cleanse our souls. But then there's a second level. Dreams that are prescient, that have meaning, and they tell you something about the future. And they therefore have meaning. Now, could a regular person have prophetic or prescient dreams? The Talmud says that since the era of prophecy ended, prophecy was given to children and fools. Why children and fools? Because there are spiritual things going around us all the time. Science doesn't know everything, and will never know everything on its own. And science could only be limited, is limited to the things that it could measure with its tools that are pretty primitive. Anyone who deals with science fiction knows that in another 1,000 years, look, we made so much progress in 200 years. Modern technology is only about 200 years old. And we went from horse and carriage, and we have rockets going to Mars and beyond. Computers, AI. We have incredible strides. Imagine where we're going to be in another 10,000 years. Well, some people tell you the world won't exist for 10,000 years. We'll destroy it ourselves, or it'll be destroyed. Well, we don't believe that. We believe that God is going to keep this world going. We could wreak havoc on the world, but it's not going to be destroyed. But anyhow, we can only imagine. We have very little awareness of what's really going on in the world. So there's a spiritual energy that's around us all the time, but we're not receptive to it because we're physical beings, materialistic physical beings. More spiritual people are able to feel it, but even spiritual people sometimes have a problem because something that the human beings possess, which is very positive, which blocks prophecy, and that's intellect, that's knowledge. Too much knowledge, I mean, in a very simple level, people who are very smart are less likely to accept things that are outside of their level of intelligence. But a simple person is very gullible. By the way, they took the word gullible out of the dictionary this year. You're supposed to laugh. Right, really. But people who are gullible will accept anything you tell them. You'll tell them that there are angels dancing on the roof, they'll believe it. An intellectual person will be very skeptical. And sometimes it's good. It's good to be skeptical about many things that we're told. Don't believe everything you read in the newspaper or hear on the radio or television or internet. You have to have a healthy dose of skepticism. But skepticism could also cause us to not be receptive to spirituality, because it's something that we can't see and we can't access with our senses. But a child doesn't have that barrier. And that's why we find throughout history that children would say prophetic things that would come true, because they were they were not resistant to that spiritual energy. Likewise, fools, people who are not that smart. So if you tell me I had a dream last night, it was prophetic, I'd say don't brag about it, because if you're not a child, it means that you're a fool, or a very, very highly spiritualized person. So yes, we do have dreams that do have the ability to predict the future. We call those premonitions. People have premonitions, and those premonitions can come in the form of a dream. And very often, and there was just something recently about the Titanic, that someone had this premonition that the Titanic is going to sink, and he was on the Titanic, and he was one of the first people to get off when everyone was hesitating. People do have premonitions. That's a reality. That's not something that one could dismiss so easily. You don't have to believe. They once said, incredible stories are told about the Baal Shem Tov. Miracle stories. So one rabbi once said, if you believe every story, you're a fool. But if you believe they couldn't happen, you're an idiot. Or worse. We don't have to believe every premonition everyone has, every dream that everyone has is going to foretell the future, but we have to be open to the idea that there are such kinds of dreams, prophetic dreams. Sometimes a dream is not prophetic, but it's a dream that connects you to another world. What do I mean by that? I've heard many stories from many people, not necessarily religious people who take it from the Torah, but their own experiences of people having dreams in which they have an experience of talking with or being spoken to by their deceased parents or grandparents. That's something that's very common. And I'll just share with you a story. I told it many times. My brother had a best friend who's also my cousin, who perished in a terrible accident, was killed on the spot. An 18-wheeler collapsed over the car and crushed it. And my brother's wife was also in that car, and she was in a coma for 7 weeks, and miraculously she recovered. I don't remember exactly at the time frame, but at a certain point, my brother woke up in the morning, and he had this dream. He said in his entire life, he never had a dream as vivid as that. And his best friend, my cousin, came to him in his dream, and he gave him a message. The next day, this deceased person's brother-in-law, who lives in Buffalo, had the exact same dream, that his brother-in-law came to him with the same message. But as one addition, he was told to give the message over to his widow. So in the dream, this rabbi, the brother-in-law, says to his deceased brother-in-law, he says, "Why don't you give her the message directly?" And he says, "I tried, but she was too frightened to look at me." He calls her up, and she says, "Yes, I had a dream last night. My husband came to me, and I was so frightened I turned away. I couldn't look." 3 people had the exact same dream of a deceased person coming to them. And this dream was, and I've heard so many other stories. And I remember once I was at a class talking about dreams, and a woman asked me, "I have dreams that my mother, deceased, comes to me and tells me things that I never knew before, and I verify that they're true. Am I crazy?" I said, do you do anything else that's crazy? Do you act in a way that people keep away from you? No, you're normal in every other respect, so I have no reason to not believe in your story. So there are dreams that have meaning, and the reason why the dream can be more prophetic than being awake is because when you're dreaming, your mind is not really functioning fully. And when your mind is not functioning, your soul is more receptive to information that is out there in the spiritual realm. So those are, that's the second level of a dream. And yes? What was the message? I don't remember the message. I don't remember. But it wasn't intended for me. So that's why I didn't remember it. I could ask my brother or my colleague, those 2 people who had the dream. Now, in this level of dreams where they have meaning, and they could be prescient, they could be predictive of the future, it could be prophecies, minor prophecies. These dreams, as I said before, are not perfect. That means there could be something in the dream that is nonsense. Some of it will be real, and some of it won't be. And it's not easy to always know what's going to be real and what's not. But there's another thing the Talmud has a great discussion about. That when you have a dream, a negative dream, it doesn't mean that it's negative. If you have a positive dream, it doesn't mean it's positive. Dreams follow their interpretation. That means that if you had a nightmare, terrible, terrible, disturbing nightmare, there's a way of reversing the negativity that might be embedded in that dream. There's a tradition, that some prayer books actually have it, that if you have that nightmare, the next day you fast. You don't eat anything or drink anything from dawn until dark. And at the day is over, you call in a few friends, and there's a whole ceremony, and the friends one of the things that they say to you is that your dream is a good dream. But it was not good. But they interpret it by saying it's a good dream. It reverses the negativity. And I'm going to tell you something, it's a very eerie thing. There was a rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi, he was known as the Ostrovce Rebbe. Ostrovce is a town in Poland. He was one of the most brilliant scholars. I mean, he had this mathematical mind. You can give him 100 figures and instantly he'll add them up without thinking. But he was also a brilliant Talmudic scholar. Some of his teachings, you have to really be a scholar to understand what he's saying. He was an incredible scholar, but he was also a very holy person. And it is said, this much could be speculation, that he had this recurrent nightmare. Some people speculate that it was a nightmare about the Holocaust, and this was in the early 20th century during time of World War I. That's speculation as far as I can't vouch for that. But anyway, we know for sure that he had a nightmare, a recurrent nightmare, and he fasted every single day, 7 days a week. He would eat a tiny bit of food at night. That's all he would eat, hardly anything. And this continued for 40 years. And he passed away before the Holocaust. And his son was one of the victims of the Holocaust, was murdered by the Nazis. Now, there's a Jew in Buffalo. Some of you may have heard of him, Rabbi Leibish Silverstein. Leibish Silverstein was a Hasidic Jew who was very steeped in learning, and he told me this story. During World War I, in the city of Nashelsk in Poland, that's where this rabbi lived at that time, World War I was raging, and this rabbi had fasted all day long, and at night he was supposed to gather these people to go through the ceremony. Otherwise he couldn't eat. He couldn't break his fast. But they couldn't meet because there was a curfew because of World War I. There was some bombing, I guess, in that area. I'm not familiar with the circumstances, but there was a curfew, and they couldn't meet. So the rabbi didn't break the fast, and he fasted the next day, and then they met the next night, and he went through this ceremony. I heard this from the man himself who was there and was participated in this ceremony. So we know that dreams follow their interpretation, and there's a very disturbing discussion in the Talmud. Two rabbis, the two greatest rabbis of their time, Abaye and Rava, had dreams, the same dream every night. And they went to this dream interpreter. One rabbi paid him, and the other rabbi didn't. So the rabbi he paid him, he gave him a favorable interpretation, and the rabbi who didn't pay him gave him an unfavorable interpretation. And everything that he said came true. For the rabbi who paid, everything turned out positive. For the rabbi who didn't pay, everything turned out negative, including a prediction that his wife would die. Well, the end of the story is that they were traveling on a boat, and the guy with the interpreter, and there was some turmoil, and a little book fell out of the interpreter's pocket. And the rabbi who got the bad interpretation opened up the book, and it said there that dreams are interpreted and the outcome follows the interpretation. The dream itself does not guarantee any outcome. It's how you interpret it. And he said, you mean this man caused all my problems in my life, including the death of my wife? That I can forgive him for everything, but not for the death of my wife. And this man knew that he awakened the anger of this rabbi, and this rabbi was a holy man. He knew his end was near. And sure enough, the Romans captured him, and they tortured him to death. That's the end of the story. It's a more graphic than that, but I'm not going to go into that. So dreams are not guaranteed to come out the way they appear. It all depends on interpretation. So if you have a bad dream, try to turn it into something positive, something that is that relates to the dream, because that helps interpret the dream in a positive way. And the reason why that works is something, as a theme that we spoke about many times, is that speech is not just communicating your ideas verbally. Speech reveals underlying realities. When you tell someone you're good, you praise someone, if the person has any good in him or her, that good will come to the surface. If the person doesn't have any good, then there's nothing to come to the surface. But everyone, we presume, has some positive energy in them. So praise, as long as it's not, radically exaggerated, you have a person who barely has ever said anything positive to anyone, and you say, well, you're the nicest person in the world. I mean, that's a little bit over the top. But if you just give a person, you reinforce something positive about them, the speech, if you think it, it won't have the same effect. If you say it, speech has that revealing effect. Speech, I think they say even plants are affected by speech. That's what they say. I never tried it, so I can't vouch for it. There's one other time when the priest, the Kohen, gives this priestly blessing. We respond by referring to our dreams, that our dreams will be transformed. Why? Because the priestly blessing is one permeated with love. In fact, the priest, when he makes the introductory blessing, thanking God for the opportunity to bless the people, he adds the word bi'ahava, with love. It's a unifying force, permeated with love, verbalized by the Kohen, who's known as a Isha Chesed. Kohen is called a man of kindness. And when that positivity and that love is verbalized, it neutralizes the negativity of dreams. But then there's a third level of dream, overt prophecy. In the second level, even if the dream is prophetic, you're eavesdropping on something outside of your level of consciousness, your normal level. But the third level is where there's a direct communication between you and God. It's like the difference between static and when you have a clear line. Static, you get the message, garbled perhaps, but you get some message, and sometimes it could be predictive of the future. But when you're a real prophet, you get a clear message. It's a clear line. But a dream is still a dream. So every prophet throughout history would get his prophecy in a dream, except for Moses. And we just read it yesterday in the Torah that God says about Moses that I speak to him face to face. No dreams, no metaphors. It's all direct. Which dreams could you think of as having real substance to it? So the Talmud gives several examples of dreams that usually mean more. You should attach more importance to them. The dreams that you have in the morning before waking up are much more likely to be meaningful than a dream you have at the beginning of the night. If you wake up in the morning with a biblical verse in your mouth that you didn't study that day, just a biblical verse comes out of your mouth, and you didn't know why you thought of that verse and why you said it, that could be a prophecy. If someone else has a dream about you who was not thinking about you that day or overly concerned about you, but someone who calls you up and says, I don't know why, I haven't thought of you in a long time, and I just had a dream about you. Take that dream a little bit more seriously. If you have a dream that you went to someone who interpreted the dream, so the dream was interpreted in a dream, that has more significance. A recurrent dream, unless you dream you want to become the rabbi of Krakow, if it's a recurrent theme that doesn't impose yourself on others, then that has significance. Dreams that are interpreted by our sages, the Talmud has a lot of emphasis on interpretation of dreams, and it goes through many kinds of dreams. Just to give you one example, if you have a dream of a pot, you should anticipate peace. What does a pot have to do with peace? So one of the commentators explains because the pot is the ultimate peacemaker between fire and water. Fire and water are obviously the most opposites you could have. But if you take a pot and you put water in it and put it over the fire, what happens? The water boils. You can cook food. So the pot is a symbol of peace. If you dream of a cat in Aramaic is called shunra. So it says you'll anticipate a beautiful song. Shunra is a composite of two words. Shira, Na'a, a beautiful song. So this is just two examples of dozens of dreams that the Talmud interprets based on either the word itself or the concept behind that word. If you have a dream on Shabbos, it's more likely for the dream to have meaning, because that's when you're closer to the other world. Shabbos is a holy day. If God's name is mentioned in a dream, that dream might have more significance. No guarantee that these dreams are necessarily prophetic, but there's a greater likelihood that they have meaning. If you're excommunicated in a dream, take it seriously. A well-organized dream. And finally, if you get very worked up, excited about the dream, your heart starts pounding, like Pharaoh. It says in the Torah, when Pharaoh woke up in the morning, his heart was pounding. When Nebuchadnezzar woke up in the morning and he not only had a dream that was disturbing, but he didn't even remember the dream. So it uses a double expression. His heart was really pounding. If your heart starts pounding because of the dream, then there's a good chance that dream has more significance. But nevertheless, the most dreams we have to dismiss. Interestingly, I'll just conclude with the one law in the Talmud. This is an actual case that happened. A man died, left a child, and one night the child has a dream. His father came to him in the dream and told him that in this place in my house, I hid $1,000, let's say, whatever it was, and that was designated for charity. It's not my money, it was designated for charity. And you wake up in the morning and you go to that hiding place and you find exactly the $1,000. Do you have to give it to charity? What would you think? No. The Talmud says you don't have to give it to charity. Dreams don't impose any obligations on us. Judaism is based on reality. A dream, as good as the dream would be, dream is still not reality in terms of imposing obligations on you. Now, if you wanted to be extra conscientious to do what's right, you'd give it to charity. I don't know too many people who wouldn't. But again, if you're destitute and that's all the money you have, and you're starving and your children don't have what to eat, you can rely on that legally speaking, dreams don't impose. And does that mean dreams are not true? They are true, but Judaism, Torah, is not about the other world, it's about this world. It's not that we don't believe in the other world, we certainly believe in it, but we don't believe that God wants us in this world to live in another world. He wants us to bring the other world down into this world, but not to escape into another world. So yes, there are times when dreams are to be taken seriously, but they don't necessarily have an effect on the way we have to behave. And if you have a bad dream, the best thing is to dismiss it and not think about it. But if it really, really bothers you, then go see your local rabbi. Any questions? Yes?
I read about this, for example, very famous example, composer Chasidism. Some dream came to him. Devil play on violin, very real music, and when he wake up, he wrote this music without any change. And this has sonat Devil Dream.
Yeah.
And amazing, great music.
Right, there are many stories.
Some composers say about this, some melody, some music came in dream. Same happened in some writers came poems during dream and they write it.
Yeah, because the dream reveals certain things in your unconscious, as well as they can bring things from the outside of your existence. But they reveal certain things, and there are many stories of many great rabbis who had questions, Talmudic questions they couldn't answer, and they woke up in the morning, they had the answer. It was given to them in a dream. There are many, many examples of that. Yes?
So much about dreams are something that you said. You said that the prophecy with Moses, that rather than getting in his dreams, that God spoke directly to Moses. So when you think of Moses as like writing Deuteronomy,
Yeah.
is Moses basically just acting and writing it as God's like his secretary, in a sense, that God is telling Moses? Or is Moses using his own ideas and thoughts, or is this God telling him?
Okay, the Talmud discusses that, and it says that the first 4 books, Moses was just like a microphone.
Just like a what?
A microphone. He was just channeling God's words without any intrusion of his own ideas, his own thoughts. The book of Deuteronomy, Moses is doing on his own, but with divine inspiration. In other words, when you're dealing with people on the level of Moses, and even on lower levels, but on a high spiritual plane, whatever they say is divinely inspired. I'll give you an example. The previous Rebbe's father, known as the Rebbe Rashab, he was one of his Chasidim came to him and he said, "My son wants to travel to America." This is in the early 1900s. And the Rebbe Rashab said, "Tell your son not to go." So he told his son not to go, but the son said, "I want to go. Just because a rabbi said I shouldn't go, why shouldn't I go?" And the rabbi again told the father, when the father told him, "My son doesn't listen to it," he says, "Tell your son not to go." And the son insisted, and he was on the Titanic. I'm not sure it was the Titanic. It was a ship that sunk. I don't know. And it fits in. It was before 1912. When did the Titanic sink? Anyone remember?
1913.
What? 1913? Okay. 1912. Okay, it fits in with the Rebbe Rashab passed away in 1920. So the father came complaining to the Rebbe. He says, "Rebbe, if you told me that the ship that my son is going to be on will sink, I would have done everything in my power to restrain him." And the Rebbe says, "Believe me, I had no idea that that was going to happen." But he said, when we say something, you have to listen. In other words, when a very spiritual person has an idea and expresses it, you know that there's a divinely inspired message. Same thing happened with our Rebbe, General Sharon, the celebrated general and prime minister of Israel, was by the Rebbe. He was by the Rebbe several times. That's a separate story. They would discuss military strategy. And the Rebbe asked him, "When are you going back to Israel?" He told him which flight he's going to be on the next day. And he wanted to cut short his meeting with the Rebbe to be able to be ready for the plane. So the Rebbe says, "No, stay. Don't take that plane. Take the next flight." And that flight was hijacked. Imagine if the hero of the 6-day war would have been on the plane that was hijacked. I don't know if the terrorists knew that he was going to be on that plane, or they just lucked out, or they didn't luck out. So that someone asked the Rebbe, "Did you know that the plane was going to be hijacked?" The Rebbe says, "No, I didn't know, but it just occurred to me that you shouldn't go." So when you're dealing with people of that caliber, anything they say is divinely inspired. And sometimes they get a direct message. And the message is clearly a prophecy, but not always. So there are different degrees. When Moses had the first 4 books, it was a direct communication. He was just the mouthpiece. The 5th book, Moses was repeating the understanding of the Torah it was filtering through his mind, but it was all divinely inspired. That's why we consider the 5th book to be no less a holy book than the other 4. In some respects, even greater, but that's another subject, so leave it for another time. Any other questions? Anything on the Zoom? No? Okay, have pleasant dreams, sweet dreams. And the main thing